equal.
Use that relationship with Capricorn type others to discern, to find out with that go in the second, see what he wants.
Yeah. Yeah. Because very often, probably, I guess, with Saturn being in Libra again. Yeah?
But the ruler being Venus in the second.
The ruler being Venus, the rule of the seventh house. Yeah, in the second. Very often, those friendships will probably then go to certain points through emotional up and down. Yeah? Exactly, and via that comparison, he will then learn to kind of thing, who is empowering him to be, that he's allowed the way he now with all his male, all up and downs, all, you know, light and shadows, putting a parental grip. Yeah? That he slips a parental role, someone can be baby, or vice versa. His emotional needs of child, we all have them, and then pretending to be wise daddy, knowing, but his need is not younger, you know, or better, all those.
And who can build on an equal that gives emotional security.
A kind of partnership structure, yeah? Which becomes the playground to heal the. Yeah? It has to be total codependency. Equal codependency. Delete that from the camera. Yes. And this being itself has to be very female. In the inner, yeah, very much. Have to. Because the exchange of gender roles on no equal basis is not possible.
Yeah, try to take responsibility for their own needs as much as they can.
Yeah. In every given moment. Co-equally help each other via good, essential, meaningful listening conversations to help the other one give the support that each of them go its individual path of self-actualization without being threatened by that. Yeah? If the other one decides, you know, like travel to ancient Rome to, you know, in the sand to find old stuff, yeah? Not being home for a certain duration of time, the part is threatened by that. Yeah? Being happy that the part goes his path. No? Does not find such a person. Yeah? Our society produces dependency. Yeah? I'm only happy if I always have to have a sweaty hand. Sorry.
And also with the Pluto generation, it's part of that signature.
Totally.
But Capricorn Saturn is sweaty.
Pardon me?
Capricorn Saturn is sweaty.
No, he's not sweaty. There's also a projected need to is totally co-equal everything, especially in the inner emotional and into the experiences of his childhood, to then a structure or a structure within the emotional by listening, by being there each other time, you know, kind of things can now be healed, like in a little hospital. No? But, you know, my Moon Pluto Most people, if it comes to a deeper emotional level, comes up in any given meaningful relationship, they get very scared. Very, very scared, because they all believe in this holy bullshit that a relationship is just like happy honeymoon and, you know what I mean? But here the real need is to find someone where, you know, there is someone when needed and who also is fine when, you know. A hope to find someone where he could, to work together with, to build up a certain kind of business life. Oh. Yeah? Okay. Skip our 12th house. Gemini in the 12th house cusp with Mercury and Scorpio in the 5th house. What are the ideals / very often unconscious?
It didn't somebody to get them because of you.
No?
I see.
Oh, Saturn, to build up a certain kind of career together.
This is the fourth.
With Saturn. Like for instance, little practice where he does evolutionary astrology and massage, you know, ancient Indian kind of Ayurvedic things. And his partner, she does next to that maybe like medicine for children. A little home. No? Like that. It's very likely that Ryan's going to work at home. Home offices.
How do you like that? We have the plan for
You know, delete what is bullshit to you.
Well, his dad has had the business out of the home for years. He only in the last couple of years has gotten outside of the home. So what he was raised with.
But 6th Jupiter, there seated. Yeah.
The 12th house thing with that he is one of his women who have deep, meaningful conversations with. He can be happy with an air.
Yes. So yes, but yes.
But the 12th house is that's its own air long. That's what. That's one of the. I mean, with relation.
Mm.
So second, sun, other 12.
I don't know why, but I right now feel a little bit like to the direction I work with this in terms of healing. So if we that, what wants to... Is that okay? Gemini. With Mercury in the 5th house. Scorpio. Inner child? Inner child is 4th house. Moon.
Thank you. Well,
So the 12th house very often carries latent health issues. Yeah? So we might carry within.
Have to do with previous.
So, if we make a good astrology statement, we always have to read or see it again. Where would you see it again? Breathing issues. Because of air? Yeah? Okay. Number one on my priority.
Mercury and Venus in Scorpio.
Quite a huge orb. But yeah, why not?
They're both there, Scorpio.
Yes?
Then very good.
Yes? Mercury, but yeah.
Yeah, well, Uranus.
But Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. Lungs. The nerve system. co-rulership with Mercury. So we see it there, yeah?
What is that Mercury?
But see, it's of course health issues. If we want to first like look maybe the 6th house, what sign do we find there? What house is Jupiter in? So we go back to Mercury kind of attitude. So back to breathing. Yeah? 3rd house? Okay.
Didn't connection with this. I jumped out of your...
Okay. Der Herrscher des Jupiter im 3. in der Jungfrau. 3. Haus bringt uns wieder die Verbindung zu Zwilling. Daher ist es... Okay.
No,
I got that.
I got on the floor again.
Yes.
The rest in German.
My tongue is like... Yeah.
Well, the moon is conjunct Jupiter.
So what does that mean?
Something fluid, like fluid in the lungs.
Okay, there's a fluid, or that if there are health issues in Ryan's life, it very often is deeply connected with his emotional.
Right, so if he emotion not feeling like
Yes.
he's at
I see him as a very healthy person. But as soon something brings him in an emotional influence for too long, boom, that's the thing about 12. I called it, it's energetic. He's so sensitive. If something gets him out of balance, if knowing about it or not, it has an immediate impact on his health issues. And there, do you call it respiratory areas? Yeah? Yes, all this shit here. Yeah? Stomach. Yeah? Probably also in not necessarily the organ, but more ability to embrace and assimilate food. You know?
and just digestive food allergy.
More like, if I might be, if emotionally there's any kind of stress, and a person like Ryan thinks for some red, for him is always stress, because he senses that. Yeah? And either gives him a feeling of security. That's one option, or the option is that he... Yeah? Probably.
Like, what was it, 3 weeks before he had decided that he was going to quit school. Discussed with Jeffrey, and he was sick. Tell it to his dad. The kid was sick. Involved, everything. ED and together. He was emotionally stressed out. He was sick.
Yeah?
Bronchitis.
I knew it. Fluid in the lungs.
Sure. All over. It's all over the chart.
So picture the Jeffrey used for using Sanical. Moving the emotion.
Yeah. Sanical would be Sanical would be great for you. She's sitting. See how universal. If you don't go to the pharmacy comes to you. Now you have to take it. Sanical. But sometimes it might be too much. There might be like something like that. Very helpful.
With the Sag and the Gemini on either the 6th or 7th cusp is one of the...
And where I use Sanical is if we find in any contact with Saturn, rest deep anger coming from previous lives. Anger, rage, yeah, has on the emotional body, yeah, and that it tastes like shit, awful, yeah. You'd like? Great, very great. It's purging. And it would be right now very good because Pluto has entered your 6th house. Yeah? Yeah?
Take it right before you go to
True. What also might have to test because Gemini in the 12th in Scorpio, Uranus there. 14.
like expect
14? Good.
and expect with the eclipse.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually been tuning into Iran to T for the cool of the brain would probably be the thing to be taking now for the next couple of months just to be able to move with all the energy that's coming through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are the signatures that you look for if you
So 14? Always Uranus, Mercury, kind of Sanical and 6, 12. Oh, sorry. I won't you. Flatten you.
Was ist Zwilling auf Englisch?
Gem-
Gemini is the leader of the 12th house. So, longing. That means all, I think it was example that long inward on
Curiosity.
curiosity and his longing for a more playful kind of these communications to be healed because of in Scorpio, afraid of showing that because past life shit that where whenever he shows he got some kind of rejection. And
Why were you making a face?
probably looks like.
Jürgen has been in a lot of mine in Hamburg. It was always very entertaining, right?
I'd love to see you go.
Native language? So one deep issue that I, in a reading, would really recommend is things in terms of healing 12th house of the area of the lungs. And we see, of course, Mercury, rule of the 12th house, latent. These things are genetic, but I don't know that because Mercury is not retro. So it might be in the first place they're psychosomatic. Yeah? They're not allowed to breathe. Yeah? Link that with what I came out like with trauma. Yeah, when they're very often it's like and keep Neptune in transit, which is right almost on its 8th. So the healing is already in process. Yeah? Of a lot of, energetic lung issue kind of things. And
I was just going to say,
sure. Like square to this. Yeah. Would be a good time for, getting it out of the system.
Jupiter opposing
look at the
True. Sure. So there's a long of of communication. What is the that Ryan realized? Projection into the seventh house on another person. 12, Gemini in the 12th house cusp. It's yeah.
Someone speak well with authority.
With authority, because on the 7th house cusp is yeah.
I get this feeling of deep humor, but very point.
To the point. A little bit like thing, yeah.
Artistic, the kind of gallows humor.
Yeah.
That would be very funny.
Yeah.
Whole package.
Mm-hmm. What does he idolize? Or a tendency of idolizing people? Gemini. First Gemini here. The teacher? Could be.
How about people who just really speak their mind?
Yeah.
You know, nothing gets in their. They're going to. No matter how blunt or.
Just the point. Yeah.
But be deceptive Scorpio thing, because there can be people who are really insecure and
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
control freaks.
Yes. Trap behind it.
Usually there's a
What is the fascination?
People who are flexible and in a lot of things, and by this doing very and moving.
Yeah. Are like interested in a lot of things. By that, being very vital. That.
a lot of different taboos.
But a kind of trap could be presents him, has knowledge about certain sexual things. Yeah, like saying, "Oh, I've experienced this and this, but I shouldn't tell you." Those kind of,
Because he's searching deep and he's searching amorphous.
Yeah, just to watch out for those. Yeah, if someone,
But he needs to experience.
Yeah, like to be able to discriminate. If someone just goes like, okay, this is my experience, da 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 da, one consciously tries to make idolization about who could learn to idolize his life.
But isn't it the first time when they offer this carrot, they withhold them from
Yeah. Yeah.
First time
Yeah.
he has to use his own sharpness to do that.
Just wanted to get that. So if someone brings like this kind of Leonian kind of I know everything kind of thing, just watch. Have more knowledge about it than most people pretend to have.
He would be able to feel the body
Mm.
because of Mercury.
Yeah.
Adjusted sun, so it was like out there.
Yeah.
And he whether this was like.
Oh. Because he has a Cancer rising, and the moon is together with her. Yeah. He feels a lot of things intuitively. Gets proof also via the physical sensation, the stomach area, especially.
Then you don't.
He just needs to be around people. He just knows, without knowing what they're about.
But then you don't do this. You trust with and don't try to intellectualize it. If you feel bad energy from this person,
Just get out of the way.
nothing.
Yeah. Don't be curious, honey.
Right.
Just go. Go here. Yeah? Another thing here, in terms because himself, idolized longing relative to everything we have worked, second house, seventh house, to be able to create a relationship where both are able, via their commitment / emotional merging process, to a certain point, go into a non-communication, where just eyes, where eye contact is extremely important for him, extremely important. This man could not open up sexually or emotionally if there is not eye contact, constantly, because he wants to merge soul, sexually. Rule of the second house, Pluto. In Libra, constant eye contact with a partner to open up trust. Then he sees what the other one is coming from. Then he can step by step open up. And then gender orientation is usually forgotten because it's making love. In this moment, hand itself, hands, nowhere to touch. Where to touch? To trigger tense, it opens up even more for the merging process. To what? To be in communication with it via the as a rising kind of making love, co-equal partner. It's not easy to be found. Yeah, that's true. Cross path.
The first one has to.
The first one has to?
Before another person has to be found.
Yeah.
It has to be him and his relationship with the divine.
With himself. First inner child. Esteem building up.
The relationship merging with the divine within, right?
Yeah.
And then it manifests in the outer world. So it's almost like seeing God eye to eye. Would that be...
That's actually what happens when you make natural tantra. You think that you see God eye to eye. You perceive it already. It's not even thinking. You melt away into the pupils. Behind the pupils you see curtains opening, opening, opening. While that you have physical sensations that are just unbelievable. And you fuck me hard. Quite the opposite. Anyway, my mom, she doesn't understand a word of English.
He's very enthusiastic.
That's yes. Any questions? I'm so sorry that we spent now so much second, seventh, and call me smartass. But if you want to, like tomorrow, if Jeffrey agrees, we have both charts already prepared, so we just have like Sharon's charts. Well, I have to give Vic a morning, so I'll be back.
He said tomorrow.
Good morning, class. No apples yet, though.
I when my dad said it was bring it in.
So apparently continuous synastry, huh?
Yes,
That was happening.
And yesterday we actually were as reading both nails. We haven't put them together.
Okay, when you ask me what you discovered in each natal chart, core dynamics. Let it go. Good morning. What do you remember from what you covered with about the two? The stories you lived?
So he said that Ryan had to connect with what was important for him was to connect his female part. to find clarity, be able to creatively himself within, depending on others for him.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I remember the most about.
And I remember a past was him because he's different and how he should stand up to them.
Okay.
He actually in the past, he was responsible for his loved one, a responsible person. And he saw that because he was so different, like in a tribal situation, revenge, he saw him also.
What about why attracting these kind of parents? Is this covered?
He's born served as an example that he could do that.
Do what?
Become in not feeling.
What about the thing attracting one parent who tells him for who he is, parents doesn't? This is a core issue here.
You love them both? You love them both anyway?
No. That'd be an answer for any of us.
Is that maybe what's between his inner enemy as far as the not having a father figure for him, supporting, which challenges his own internal security within his family member?
Yes. What about the last link with judgment? There's a whole on judgment. What's the point of drawing a father would have these heavy-duty judgments issued out of consensus value associations and belief systems? It has nothing to do with what his reality is. What's the intent of creating that kind of father?
Conflict.
But to free and liberate from it. To challenge him to break free and liberate from it.
The intent being what?
To break free to come up with his own idea.
Sign that inner security.
That's part of it, but the core issue is referred to the South Known Aquarius, who understands what this clue is about. Locate the ruler, you'll see why.
I mean, like that, for him to learn to be a better father from it.
I don't know. For me, I just feel to be more tolerant, not judge.
Right.
It's about karmic union.
That's one of the ways about its individuality.
What is not?
What it is.
Through what it's not. What is the intent of the father?
The role model of what he doesn't want to do.
Exactly.
Comparison and contrast, realizing that he's not.
And in which ways would these differences be experienced by Ryan?
Loss and betrayal.
Through intense confrontation. Are being that have nothing to do with Ryan's reality. Create cycles of deep self-introspection that generate a hell of a lot of stress on Aquarius. And the very vital force is a pretty intense dynamic. Necessity for that sort of intensity. Just because in the last few years he's been compensating for his illness. Wrong has caused Ryan to hide inside. The soul intends in this life not to what she intrinsically, second relative to hiding, fear, judgment, etc., this becomes a determinant of why the kind of intensity. Especially with respect to that kind of symbol of distorted patriarchy. It'd be the very embodiment of it in one man.
You mean in the way? And
Do as I say. This is not of its own confusion for Ryan. To see a father offer a hypocritical reality. What kind of conflict do you think this induces for Ryan?
It was great during this chat yesterday because when you did it, like both everybody professional chat.
Everybody was not anymore.
Ryan's tired. The intent of drawing that sort of
It's a reinforcement of not the father being in that pattern.
true, but there's a larger extension that will apply to his work.
Yes.
That's true. There's the link to the sort of father.
Judgment.
An effect that kind of react has on people.
Because he has experience with it.
Yes. And thus develops a state of absolute psychological empathy. So, similar souls have to experience something applicable to his life work. You see the intent.
Which aspect does show you the Hippocratic way of...
See if you can find it. See if you can find it. Find it.
What was the question?
What's the indicator of the hypocritical father?
Pluto conjunct. And, yeah, Pluto the sun.
The phenomenon we see is Capricorn, Saturn, and 10th house. See which dynamics you can put together and cover the theme of hypocrisy.
Saturn,
That's one.
Mars, and Venus in Scorpio.
That's two.
And no, I'm not Venus. Mars and
Also, the Earth archetype in general way can be hypocritical.
The 10th house squares the nose.
What else? We're already starting to see repeating themes. If that's not enough, there's more. Ryan wanted to so.
Fourth square in the constellation Capricorn 7. Libra.
How about Saturn squaring the ascendant?
True. And what do we find on the descendant? Doesn't Saturn, 7th house have something to do with relationships? Particularly in the early life, or icy MC? Do we not see a hypocritical parent? Saturn squares, or Capricorn squares Libra. Duality of judgmental standards. Do you see it now? Now, question, a father type like that, other type in the antithesis of the father. What's the intent? Comparison, contrast. The real issue, you have one parent, the individuality, and could be nurtured for that. That is the intent. Why? Because of his own intent to recover himself. How far did we get in our analysis? What do we know about that? What do we remember from it? Core dynamics.
It's on the other board.
The other board. Dynamics for sure. Whoa.
On Orion's Saturn are symbolic of the split between the mother personal truth.
The what split?
The Jupiter between the Moon and Saturn, is that symbolic of truth between?
Because he's going to create a mother who is as square as the moon. You'll see that he's creating a mother who's intrinsically masochistic. And yet all given orientated which was the perfect counterpoint for what he would need via a father who could give him nothing.
If Barbara attaches in the camera, could you...
Yeah.
That's Gemini on those Gemini. Because I have
Aries.
So what do we remember Cheryl's core dynamics here? Just review what you fully.
An emphasis on something I can
She had a hypocritical mother.
Hmm?
No, you're asking core emphasis.
Core dynamics.
So breaking free from
Well, where do you see that intent here? How would you know it?
well, from what I remember, there was trying to personal body free of patriarchal conditioning. The moon in the, I can't really speak to but the moon in the 12th house in Capricorn, the Uranus 6th house in the sign of Cancer, showing the trauma, emotional body, and self-image.
What's the intent of recreating that trauma?
To throw back on itself with own image of it is appropriate for herself.
There's some before that.
To break free,
To bring the pathology of masochism to a head. Core intent. In circumstance to bring pathology to a head.
We have a mother,
Core dynamics.
father that didn't fit to imagine what he could.
Why?
He created that first self for escape from the mom that she had.
Why?
mom was like, her mom almost acted like her father was hyper-critical.
Why?
To nurture herself, to imagine what their ideal the best.
In a way, you're right, but it was to create such a emotional, traumatic crisis that it induces a psychology of absolute disillusionment, in which everything is removed. When it's all removed, then any soul that replace that which is being removed with something else. In Cheryl's case, what is going to be the replacement factor?
The perfect mom.
No, question with respect what is going to reconstitute a sense of real meaning. If something is totally removed for disillusionment, nothing is holding any meaning. There's a first initial need to that with some ultimate meaning. So what does that mean? Something comes before that.
Her own direct.
The answer is seen in the pattern. Jupiter.
You mean in the opposition of Moon and Uranus?
Right. What's the essence of the ninth house archetype? Hmm?
To find a teacher. Only her authority. Leave or travel.
To give your life sense and purpose. To have a sense of life.
It's the need in all people to understand the philosophical basis of reality, cosmology, philosophy, metaphysics. It's the underlying archetype. So, by this T square, look at the thing. What is the intent? When this absolute disillusion is happening, what is then going to happen? Obviously, the intent is to strip away everything with patriarchal beliefs. Where the disillusionment lands. So wherein lies the replacement factor?
Find initiate finding her own belief structure.
Yes, but what's that going to be?
Jeffrey, do you look to the Pluto polarity point for the resolution? Like,
There are solutions within the problem. That's what most astrologers never realize. The problem, the solution's right within the symbols creating the problem.
which is within the T-square, you see the
The solution.
Develop a relationship with
The answer is really simple. What is the what is the essence of Jupiter ninth house Sag? It's root issue relative to philosophy. Natural law.
Most too easy.
You did. Please put the words on it. Which is a reflection of her own origin issues in the end. Do you understand my point? She moves in that direction, and what is inevitably going to happen relative to her existing relationship with Mr. here. What's going to
about the psychological effects of it.
Yes. Actually, you look at an increase in anger. But what more importantly, what's going to happen psychologically and emotionally?
A release.
An absolute state of polarization. emotional, psychological / spiritual realities couldn't be further apart than if they tried. What is then going to be the impact when he sees his parents this way? Ministry.
He's going to have a conflict within himself. He's going to have a conflict within himself relative to his two parents.
What kind of conflict?
Well, an identity. He has to start choosing his what he wants to identify with.
Turn around and ask if that's true. Validate yourself. Brian's right behind you.
Isn't it true that you have to look at both of your parents from within yourself? You've got to do that. To get your... Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I know
What she's
that.
asking, was there a period of time that was true? Was there? So this is what you can call experiential relatives. You can, this is a important moment because you have two people here whose starts are in front of you.
You maybe try to feel like him more.
Now, given Ryan's overall life, what parent do you think he's finally making total bonding with? To the Cheryl's own intent. And where do you see this through synastry? Find the symbols that support that reality.
That opposition sitting on his house axis. Are you talking about?
Where does Cheryl's Pluto start with? In his, what does that tend to suggest?
That person was push your mind away. Push your mind away.
Somebody else's soul right on your north node. What does that suggest?
Going the same direction.
The fated relationship between the two of them.
Clearly. When you put it relative to the context.
And also his son Pluto's on top of as far as the Neptune square.
What about the Moon-Jupiter conjunction in his chart?
What does that tell you about his perception of his mother?
That it's connected to his own philosophical current.
Represents the parent that represents philosophical, emotional growth and healing. She's the one that brings the ideas initially to him. Think about this. I was reading that. What do you think about this? Third house. But relation progressively, he will perceive the intense emotional pain induced because of his critical husband. What does this do by way of his emotional reality? Not just for him, but through extension, his own work requires.
It creates a feeling. Is Pluto conjunct her Neptune in the 9th house of Libra?
Mm-hmm.
So through a greater understanding about the relativity of the father and the mother, which are their plan part of what's happening overall, what's happening.
Yes, because as Ryan gets older, they'll ultimately become symbols / symptoms for the nature of this whole society at that level.
Yeah.
Can you imagine as Ryan gets older and becomes more self-confident in himself, self-confidence, and then when he's an adult operating through his own work, can you imagine the intensity of his voice along these lines?
Jeff, could we maybe go to the chart time following what is said, finding it on the chart?
To do that. Let's take a small break while we do this. Now, if we start with you notice that Taurus and is this a 23 degree plus?
Yes,
It's going to stand here in the first house. look where it stands. Right here.
Yeah.
Here. And we notice that in Ryan's particular case, this symbol, or this symbol, yes, no? Also find this symbol, yes, no? There's something involved. Where's the focus of those 6 steps? What helps? What does that tell us right away? Are they the same family before?
Were they probably siblings as well? Brother, sister?
Well, we can see that potential thing.
Well, the Mercury Scorpio is exactly conjunct at Uranus.
The African jump.
The Uranus, the ruler of that south node.
That can mean that. It can also mean being in families before in which there are siblings involved. I.e., already being parents, other siblings. Could be both things. What about trauma? Together. If so, how did it occur? What dynamics? What circumstance?
Separation, the force of the tragic.
Why? Why did it occur?
Betrayal.
Betrayal? Where is it?
I think more outside, circumstances outside of the environment, of the internal environment, something outside.
Okay, what was that?
It was there, I have a feeling like there was siblings and it was sexualized, and the reason I get that is that Mercury rules the 8th house. In the 8th Virgo, Mars, and John and Cheryl. So I get that they were siblings, it was sexualized, and through the Uranus, Mercury, separation of the 2 children as a result.
I understand, but that is actually not the scenario. The actual scenario would involve a scheme of genocide of whole people, in which they were involved in that genocide, not as perpetrator, but as victim. So what that means. The grouping of tribes is in the is here. When was this thing? In the context of being family. And in this context, of the son.
Say that we were killed just because we were different and because we weren't going along with the so-called consensus social structure that was I mean, our whole
Scorpio, Jewish people with this concentration camp.
Let's just deal with the theme of the American genocide.
Could you repeat that?
It's one of the American Indian genocide with the white race.
But what are the signatures that indicate that? That's what I thought too, but I didn't know why.
You want to see the indicator with Venus, Virgo here. And the correlates to that period. Should be in the child, which we indicated here. Relative to parents.
I didn't get that with the Venus. Is Venus the time frame of what happened? According to age, also according to
Ages and sub-ages.
ages and sub-ages.
Pisces Virgo has a direct correlation with genocide of American Indian on this continent. As it does a direct correlation with the Jews relative to Deutschland. Relative to the genocide of ongoing peoples in this, i.e. what happened in Laos, the Khmer what's happening down in Africa. So part of what this time is.
Okay, my next question is why do you point at Venus?
We want to locate it. This is a technique you don't know called geodetic equivalence. And when you start to understand geodetic equivalence, you'll see that this line, Scorpio line, has a direct correlation to this part of the United States. This will essentially color the western United States.
Which is the code? Was father responsible for this act?
Not this particular house, well, no.
I guess they won't be watching these tapes anymore.
15 minutes he watched it.
Good thing he's already decided he's not going to watch.
Father, why don't you move to your right?
Jeffrey, yeah, you said that it was a mother-son relationship. Is it, in the chart would we find out, who was it the same setup, mother and son, or was it the other way around?
Yeah, that's where you have to do the photosynthesis.
Okay.
Well, look at the photos. Well, see if you can't find that Venus, really, a parent.
Are we going back to the genocide question now?
Well, you need to go to find it.
Venus moon? Would that be an indication that I was his mother before? My
Venus and where?
my Venus on his moon.
Yep. In which, through just that natural dynamic, mother-son is an unconditional love. You wanted to absolutely and purely give to one another.
And his on her child, that's where they. And because my Venus Mars is on his moon Jupiter in Virgo, wouldn't that mean that we helped each other for our very survival? That we had to work together to affect our
Because
survival?
of the obvious crisis, yeah. That's how you're supposed to come to know each other, so the mutual creation of crisis, life after life.
Does his moon on her Venus and his Venus on her south node mean that the family relation, well, now he's her son, former times she has been his child? Could it mean that?
No, we're picking up a blurred line.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you have there is a mutual need for each of them to mutually need. Imagine a son experiencing the impact of his family on himself or his mother. The witnessing of that destruction obviously is going to want to give to him. You put this in the context of particular life that in military sites, which folks who come into the Scorpio eliminating through this genocide. And the typical application of Yugoslavia, one committed genocide there in Kosovo, and the very first line of attack was killing the young men that are fighting age men. The U.S. Army did exactly the same thing to the American Indian tribes with respect to their men. So if all left now is a mother with a young problem, this is where the lines get blurred. Because in essence, in that particular life, Ryan took over the duties, really, of the killed father.
Where do
Mars. Where's Mars? Then you see the displacement. Sun. You see it, we stayed right through here. The inner south northern pulse. Because of the implied crisis. Something's been killed.
What about Chiron? Do you look to Chiron at all for the? Do you look to Chiron at all for the?
Yeah, sure.
This here, 11 in Taurus, and hers is in Sag, and that goes more like more of the same.
When you see we're in the core theme, then there's some way that theme a variety of different ways. In the core story. So in essence, both Ryan and Cheryl have chosen to remember their individuality, to create an external reality. See? They've both done this. Don't we? One of the ongoing issues here is having ongoing discussions about the what is this rapidly logical self-knowledge? Yes or no? The very nature of bullshit. Patriarchal. Can't you imagine this discussion between the two? Ask them. Intent of which of didn't do.
Themes associated, especially Cheryl's. The family is really a symbol for what's happening. I mentioned this before. And so here we have a course and through point counter discovery we are through this one. Here mind and within the family it's a symbolism of working. You know, the planet where like mind can come together, find groups. They can two people within a family, two people in one, and within a world, obviously, the greater the number of like-minded people coming, the greater change they can make.
Right. You see this necessary between confronting the bullshit of distortion, yes, / patriarchal shit, versus that which is natural. We see this as an underlying theme, yes? Not only in terms of their work to do, but personal reality, identities. Yes or no? Do you think that, let me ask this question, do you think Ryan's going to be able to, in quotes, traditional? It's not Marlboro Man? It's not, what is he? It's a very important issue. Ryan has imagine the kind of messages from the patriarchal father turned out to be a man. The impact there, the trauma, the psychological condition and crisis. True. I don't care how is. So imagine the effect on a little boy, still trying to get this household approval. A little bit of love. See it.
Anger whenever he treated in the patriarchal, and she didn't feel good about it. He knew he was deadly afraid of showing his anger. Uranus conjunct Mars in Scorpio, so he wasn't as a child for who he is.
Sad. Stated almost feeling perpetually threatened around the father and at the same time trying to get his love. What kind of emotional psychology is his imprint? How does this impact on his own maleness? His own sense of inner security about being a man? Describe it to me. That's not in the heads. I want to hear a description.
Die and the overlay of what the father wants. Take that picture and put it on almost like a living alive.
Mm-hmm.
More than a destructive lie because it hurts him on the inside. A way of eroding his.
It's true. You see love from the point of just being him.
There is no way the love can even get because it doesn't set to that.
That's true. That's right. The internalized question becomes, what the fuck is me? And the answer is reality, ultimately. The only thing that's wrong is not Marlboro Man, according to Papa. Now, if in fact our lifetimes living with natural cultures, which it will be true here, and he's already our life exposure, and again called natural. It is part of the memory base. Context of those natural ways of living, there's going to be men and women in those places that are still living naturally. Does this that Ryan's already and other life, other kinds of role models? Does it not mean that he's already been another kind of male called natural? Contributes to the conflict, that memory base.
How do you see
If he already had,
Because is there some of it, his son in her ninth house? His son
whose son and who?
and son and his mother's ninth house. That's
Clearly one of their linkages. That's been one of their linkages. Particular chart. Who said Moon conjunct Jupiter? You got it.
You know,
You're squaring Neptune. See Jupiter. These are prior life egocentric formations.
it seems that the whole crisis around the father is Scorpio in the 5th, and then father, like I had a Mars, fuck them all. Masculine is. You know, it's like masculine is on the 5th house stage, you're getting that attention for this image, right? But the result is back in Leo second, which is finding integrating who you are. In that Jupiter, there's still the symbolism of Jupiter, and you got one end, you got the moon on the other, integrating the male and the female, coming out with the real he is, which is this Mars in its fifth, is an is conjunct Uranus, it's split. It's the aspect and detached from reality, really. It creates this out distortion that he taken out of many lives, forcing him to go forwards to that resolved node in the second.
I would disagree with the one part of your statement. No. He's never taken.
Always been the same.
Right.
What?
On this behavior where he's made himself Marlboro Man. There's been an underlying all along. And one reason conscious memory of types were in fact conscious memory of these two. The memory of being what father versus the other. This is what gives him the other two. Right. Form of rebellion, link with instinct, north.
Sorry, what is the natural father type?
Look in the chart.
And his sun in her chart. And Jupiter.
Jeff, when you're with a client and you get a feeling like, to me, Ryan just natural man. It's not something I mentioned. You know, his exudes deep, just presence and power that just sits there at such a deep level. I mean, I would say, and then going back to the nurturing male, in the sense of the male form in his life. But that's, so you kind of use that too, to finish your own sense of.
Exactly. Even if you read the very nature of the animal, how you even see what comes through the eye, everything.
He's so centered, you know, just poised.
See how wonderful you are. I mean, even if you get up to speed. Smelled. Yeah.
I forget the time, but they said it's like this exotic flowers or something, and blooming and for mine, I almost think it's like beautiful scent, that's like flowers.
See, even if his life up to look for himself, right? Why is it? What is the symbol? Also an intent to recover skill. To now. Yes. It's the Scorpio scoring the nodes.
But also you have the energy class and that, and
Yes. Symbolism of his life work.
Well, and Uranus is conjuncting, well, around his south node.
And so if we see it in the context of life, Uranus, south node, nodal return, etc. And that very same Uranus transit igniting the Scorpio stuff. Don't you see how this is a symbol? The recovering skips, even of a group that is now supported. I mean, if you really look at this quite deep, this would mean at this point in time that there's no one right and wrong. Every one of your own and your own have tried to support in your own. That's is clearly one of the reasons. You notice the genocide is happening, the are killed. Guess who? Guess where all my lands? Coincidence, synchronicity. So, now what I'd like you to do before we move into other things is go ahead and make whatever observations you're making here at the street. You don't have to be right or wrong. But that you're observing that you want validation on or have a question around. Does this mean this, that? You can either ask myself or ask the two relevant people.
I think it's really what we have. I just kind of jumped out at me the Uranus is on my Mercury. You know, I mean, insight sometimes. When we'll go, I always come back and like.
That's the nature of school.
You know, and, well, or I thought it was messy. You know, and we work it out, and then we think of, and I think that's good for me and work it out because he's not doing that English. Father just wants to deal with it, and then when we deal.
That's because of the the grow. Context of Scorpio, i.e., Mercury, Mars, it is a classic application of it.
I just thought that was helpful class.
Oh, good.
Help each other do same thing. But we compare and contrast. You know, help each other develop or find
We talk a lot about philosophy. We talk a lot, and we talk about, you know, the inner God. I mean, we talk a lot about, you know, how we see humanity moving towards. I mean, we talk. People though. We observe people together.
I can what?
I'm not sure, but I'm not sure, but they have some psychological way discriminate that.
And then we
Planet Neptune. And there's this, I just do the Neptune Pluto conjunction. With the thing is there kind of like an understanding that's not good. That's what I've just noticed with Neptune is like Neptune as the understanding. So
Yeah, and the understanding is relative to the intrinsic psychic structure, and that occurs unconsciously. It's sort of like the analogy of like a consciousness, and you have the numbers open. So in that section, the numbers fit. Psyches are open to unconditionally, actually.
I've been busy till now figuring out what in Ryan's chart is showing that he had a more natural father before. Is that shown by balsamic to Jupiter and Moon?
That's one of them.
What's the other one?
Moon, Jupiter of itself. The Moon squaring Neptune. The conflict right there, the having memories of natural man versus Arshlock, father.
Probably had other sides too, than being an astronaut.
Well, in this case, it would be the extremes. It's kind of either or, South Node in the 8th. South Node in the 8th has a or scenarios.
But I guess it probably won't help him a lot to see his as an astronaut, but there's more.
That's all ultimately for him to validate is in fact an asshole. Period. And it's whole.
Then in natural law, I guess the biological father is the father. That means the mother's brother or the grandson of the mother's side. The issue of biological father is maybe not as important. The true father, the uncle, the grandson.
It's important what not to be. So now it's critically important.
Jeffrey, with all his Sun and his Pluto and Leo, it is important that he is an asshole. That he doesn't have to come and try to make it
Right.
so it's important for him
But it's also just as important relative to his own life purposes to understand why the father's at.
But first there has to be understanding of,
It's all to validate that at one level for him he's an asshole.
yeah. Then, once he's established that, understanding is correct, right?
Exactly.
Then compassion can come.
Right.
But the first comes first.
Yes.
What about the anger at not getting what you want from your own father? That be the Mars square Mars?
Yes. But in the end, all this is resolved with one question, which is true for any of us. Why did I need to create this for myself? To remove any sense of being a victim. It's not a matter of why is this happening to me, it's a matter of why did I need it, with respect to full self-knowledge.
Is it necessary to go through that step of why did this happen to me, or can that just be dismissed and just move to the next step? Is it necessary to be angry that you didn't get what you want from your first, or can you just acknowledge?
You have to allow the standard to be free of it. To be free of it if you suppress it.
And isn't that what the talking with Cheryl with his mom to diffuse that anger?
Sure.
To free that energy?
Absolutely.
Who he is?
Yes.
Especially for Ryan, it's important to get in touch with his anger because the Uranus, the conjunct Mars, he always had been detached from his anger and by that not being himself.
That's really good. Until it's accessed dead on or head on, you're just right. It leaks out here, it leaks out. That's the displaced function. And that's why, let's say in this particular stimulus, you displaced anger, it can cause a response to the stimulus. Displaced. It's important to do this, to validate it, own it,
I think it's really, I mean, like right before we said, I just hate him. You know, and Ryan gets really mad, but then he comes and we talk, and, you know, it's like, It seems like it helps to talk about it.
Of course it helps.
Does it
Hmm?
to do would be important for Ryan to be a place for that to happen? There could be other places that he could do that if Cheryl wasn't available. I mean, that they could talk about how to do that, so that he could feel that faith not going to consume him.
Does he need a place to vent? Does he need to the father express his anger, or does he just to deal with it internally?
There'll be another point in the life in which that can be done. This is not the moment. But you're right, at some point it must be done. But only after once realized Ryan has his own to come through that type. Because then the discussion will have a different kind of tonality. You see this sort of father type with the hair trigger. So you can imagine Ryan is not completely fully aware of to come through such a thing, the tonality therein. What's the father going to do? This has already happened in other lifetimes, where the father type is physically destroyed through violence. That's why Eddie's impulse to attack, he's caught himself because of that subconscious memory. The instinct's there.
That would be the north in Leo in the second, so aligned with your truth and your own center and your own need. And then when he comes from that place, he won't be caught off guard. Well, and also then he wouldn't then get caught into the being a victim. He may have been in the past, being in his own power and strength, and then from that point being able to feel the for his father on a bigger picture of understanding.
Yeah, this will be 20 years from now. This
Right.
is Saturn standing, and this will happen at the end of this guy's life.
Resolution.
Right. But not even the issue of resolution. It's just the issue of Ryan saying what he has needed to say all these years. But at that point in time, we'll be able to be either communication with the father Saturn or Libra. We've received it. That's the point. Because as Ryan gets older, he'll remember actually even about the nature of reality. And therefore the way he presents is going to be. It would start with sentences like, look, even though you did what you did, I realize you've done the best you can do with what you've got to work with. However, what you have to work with it starts that way. Create a disarming effect in the very beginning. It'll take a while for Ryan to realize that as a true reality. Not just writing the words to write the words, but from an emotional reality that's his. And that's going to create Saturn in the fourth quite some time to get there. Do you see how that's following? Okay. Well, again, what other things do you want validated that you're observing? Any aspect, anything?
What is the two Saturn conjunct? The two Saturn between the
Saturn conjunction Leo?
no,
And Libra? That means that the structure of their consciousness is identical. It means that they have a consciousness that is intrinsically structured, share and include. That's what it is. Signatures in this life. No matter what happens on the planet. They'll both be made to survive. Just because of that fact. More genocides for you guys. It also means they have a common connection through original Roman Greek. as slaves. People brought in from other races, made into slaves.
Because of the Libra.
That and the connection of Venus on South Node and Virgo. Slavery. What other questions?
With his Jupiter falling on Venus, Mars, and 8th house around the survival or the what was
It means your souls made a pact prior to the current life, in which the very nature of the pact is such that each of your souls have promised to one another to show up in one another's life when one or the other or both are in some moment of extreme crisis, in such a way that one or other or both would help one another through his crisis. It's a pact. It's like an Apache blood brother.
That is shown.
the Moon, Jupiter on my Venus, Mars, and the 8th house in Scorpio.
It's also one of the symbols of the sexual connection and the reasons why that would occur, which we've occurred in these couple times in the lifetimes in Rome through the vehicle of mutual slavery. So a connection going all the way back to again the mutual slavery. Questions? So we feel perfectly.
Well,
Yes, sir. Wunderbar.
I've got the composite if you'd like to put it.
Yes, please. Go ahead and put up the composite, and then we'll go ahead and take another break.
Someone with good.
Fine. Take a quick glimpse if that's not true. Is it black and white? And again, the other component, the couple of two people, the coupleness, the third entity. Do you understand my point? In other words, we can be in a relationship. Most of us have been more intimate thing. We all carry our own essential nature, yes? And what happens with this one, or this one, even though we're carrying our essential nature, they're carrying their essential nature. And we blend ourselves in a relationship that tells you that those two essential natures create a relationship. Which is why the dynamics of the relationship are unique to that relationship. If I'm with person X, what that coupleness feels like is different than when even though my nature is the same, now with person B. See my point? Is it lives? What a composite chart is. So, given those two those, we're now seeing, if we start with our evolution dynamic, Pluto, South Node's rulers, somebody take it over from there. And now put it in the mother sun. Here's the relationship.
As we stated before, coming together in a time of to survive or to try to survive, one another.
Now they're seeing the composite.
Well, I'm looking at Pluto together, through the crisis, and then the South Node house, life-threatening circumstances that, that they're trying to survive.
What about the theme? Where do you see it in the composite?
Because, no, first, that's one of the things.
Aquarius on the 11th, Uranus, balsamic to Pluto. Would this be lifetime to bring to culmination a series of lifetimes of learning through trauma, through crises through trauma?
It's also restated with Chiron and Taurus, which is being activated as we speak.
Green 12.
And this thing is
No, it's 11.
it's 11.
It's drawn incorrectly on the board.
Oh, okay.
Activated now through the Pluto square. Where you could say that there is shit starting to come. That's what you say. So what else do we see here?
Did you say?
What else? Would be the intent, for example, note in Taurus, true house, ruled by Venus in the 5th, which is balsamic to Uranus, which is itself balsamic to Pluto, itself being balsamic to Pluto. Stories in those symbols. Okay.
Of all the crisis now to a point of a life now, this life, through all the different associations that they've been with together through crisis in family situations. And now developing that secure base through what they've had to like and unconsciously.
What about validating with one another what their own inner relationships are to themselves, individuals, then validating with one another relationship to one another, that inner relationship is natural law, natural principles, natural beliefs. Is this not a core intent? And once that is fundamentally validated, the meaning for each of them, be in charge of reality creation, no matter what. Then it's the old American bumper, the cliche, take it or leave it. Each of them develop an attitude, this is who I am, creating a reality around it, and then the inner attitude, take it or leave it. Then it's not the point. Does everybody understand it? Mm-hmm. And this would then mean without compromise. And in this way, and whom to be friends with, be in association with, and whom to be intimate with, versus whom not. This purpose is demonstrated with Libra, Mars, in the 7th. Helping you to understand the nature of relationships. You understand the point? That means we're all clear.
When you said, when you were talking about the North Node, Virgo, you said we had where am I seeing that? In that Venus in the 5th house, seeing natural law.
It's called synastry. This is when you two vehicles.
But, also being Scorpio, what,
depending on the nature of culture. You're looking at specific culture at various points in time.
Maybe the oldest one.
The various oldest one in here? Mongol. You know that. Look what just happened. In truth, the state. Bingo.
Earlier sculpture archetype.
Relative to ancient and original Mongolia. It was one of the most advanced peoples out there that graced this. Even down to their cosmology. Their cosmology, when they were was in direct opposition to the patriarchal presentation of cosmology. The patriarchal presentation of cosmology is that life is on the sun. Their cosmology started with the life is born in darkness, not light. The origin of life to them was the moon, not. Of course, in recent times, this simple fact has been validated even by the current icons called scientists. Discovering that life exists 10,000 feet under the water. Events in which you have a chemical reaction relative to heat. That's the causative factor of life. This should be so simply obvious to all of us. What happens when an embryo is conceived? It's conceived in darkness, relative to heat, relative to chemical reaction. The bottom line being that this particular culture understood the natural truth of this, and as a result their culture is a reflection of that core underlying truth. The types of women men produce. It's like no earth has ever seen again.
Is that culture, I don't know, was it Marches and present in Mongolia?
Yes.
Did the Tibetans come up?
The Mongolians migrated to Tibet. That was an extension, yeah, originally, which is why the initial religion of Tibet was not Tibetan Buddhism, it was Bon, which is really a natural form of magic. Natural laws are harnessed via ritual, directly extended out of Mongolia.
And even because I read this book, The Way of the White Cloud,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, it was a fascinating book in many ways, and I'm very drawn to Tibet, but even the way they describe Buddhism, which has a lot of really good things in it, they described the Bon people, and
Yeah.
they were like, I mean, we don't have fortresses, but we have God, like, you know, and they made it
Mm-hmm.
the way they described.
Obviously, the two basis of Tibetan Buddhism. That's why it's Tibetan. They fused the two.
So that culture was lost for Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
Philosophy was opposite.
Right. Exactly. So now, things like Mongolia, things like Egypt, that connect things like Stonehenge, that connects with things like cultures that we realize that the truth of nature itself, the rocks and the plants. And so,
Did Tibetan fall under Scorpio? Did Tibetan also fall under Scorpio?
yes.
So would this be the Scorpio archetype, or are we talking South Node in Scorpio?
Well, Scorpio is an archetype. The other themes that we see in this composite list deal with proto-nodal axis.
Resolving together over and over, learning how to be self-reliant.
What's the clarity point for this, Pluto? What's the house? What's it mean?
We need to connect with our inner divinity, to understand who we are and to develop our alliance. To connect with that first in order to be self-sufficient and to be one in ourselves.
That's all true. What else does it mean?
Move away from crises. Away from
Yes.
peace.
How is that? And then the question comes on.
Merge with God.
Well, to validate each other. To validate each other, you know, the to validate each other.
But how is crises going to be eliminated? Go back and forth between 6 and 12, 6 and 12.
Well, part of it is work. They're going to do,
Yeah.
what they're going to do together.
So let's go into that, go more into detail. In other words, answer the question, how would the work function if properly acted serve as a vehicle to eliminate crises?
Teaching about healthy relationships and also with Jupiter in Cancer, teaching about this ancient knowledge of tribal people, natural law, healthy balance in the masculine and feminine.
The direct answer is right, but the direct answer is that by creating a work which honors each souls, that work will involve each of them to help in professions by satisfying the need of crisis in a professional sense. I don't need to experience it in a personal sense.
Oh, we feel about that one.
That we can get it at once and once.
Well, also the Jupiter in the third house, Pluto in the sixth, that also indicate as far as that being in Cancer, developing within each of them the secure base based on the natural law, which is in each of them, and developing that security within to then be able to project and connect to that higher wisdom and natural law.
Yeah, because this would have the effect of making more large the inner horizon, the inner consciousness. And so you can see the large picture behind any or event and or respond from that point of view. Once you create a response mechanism which eliminates reaction, this of itself will minimize crisis formation.
South Node in the 8th house in Scorpio and Pluto in the 6th house in Scorpio. Doesn't that mean that they had a past, which you already said, where they were slaves? One of the functions of Pluto and polarity point in 12 is with Uranus is that by going through spiritual routines, they could find a way to free their memory, which is Uranus, from that slavery attitude, and by into the freedom and the possibility.
Excellent.
Well, Brian and I, he came up with this idea of wouldn't it be great if we could work together someday in a healing capacity for...
Right on. It's the only answer. Right on.
You was the sixth house of work is conjunct the moon Neptune in the eighth Scorpio. You know, it's like, it's not good to
Yeah, exactly.
work at home too,
Mm.
not an office.
Mm. So, what else can
Jeffrey, the ruler of the north node is conjunct the ruler of the south node
mm.
in balsamic.
The completion, culmination, creating old circumstances. It was not the first time they've been with Mr. Asshole.
Are we done?
Huh? It really depends. And the dependent point is what Ryan does with him towards the end of the father's life, what you yourself do. It can be life. But in your particular case, it becomes utterly non-dependent to develop your absolute self-reliance. And once you move to dependency, then you can just be exactly who you need to be with him. Punches. Pulling the punches keeps the... Do you understand that?
That's pulling the punches means.
Not saying what needs to be said. Not saying what needs to be said. So,
That would mean in that, if you look at these symbols, staying in an inferior position. 6,000.
because it means stop fearing eggshells. I mean, you'll never know where the character is going to come out. It's like walking on eggshells. All teaching is stop walking. In other words, she's to him. Once she's totally actualized her own reality from within, he'll learn to be on eggshells, so to speak, around. It's called turning the table.
That presented a good life.
Yeah, really. No, it is the inner strength.
You know, coming from that inner strength, that inner solidness that you have with him.
Nice. Dumb. I don't quite know where I am.
Label for yourself.
It's like those trucks up and you hear the beeper. Beeper on me wherever I go, so just be aware.
Jeffrey, you together and supporting this dynamics, and would that, I think probably everybody here is probably have some planet in Scorpio, and I'm thinking with their South Node in Scorpio, would that be the linkage?
Theme can be of archetypes. Every soul in this room has a variety of reality to be persecuted and attacked and invalidated. A common culture that we all come through, see it in the charts one way or another.